All right. So, um, I'm actually redoing a video that I did this afternoon because I didn't really like the way that I did it, and I found out some better ways to do it. So, this is starting off, we're continuing this wonderful ice cream cone. And today, or right now, I'm going to show you how to do the waffle texture in the cone part. So, I wanted to say a couple things I didn't say before. I was about to show you how to put a reference picture on in the previous video, but then I just showed you pictures from the internet. So now I want to show you how to put the reference picture. So if you want to put a reference picture on, you go to Add or Shift A like usual. But instead of putting a mesh, you put Image Reference. Now I'm going to go and find the picture that I'd like to use. So I have this picture that's called Cone. If you want to see the pictures, you can go to Display Mode, Thumbnails, and that's the picture that I want, a cone. So you get the reference picture on a plane, on a flat plane. So if I select this picture, I can just move it somewhere, and I'll shrink it a little bit. And I'm just using this as a reference to look at. Now, what you do a lot of the time is you actually use the reference picture directly and you model directly over the picture as if it's sort of a template. So you could actually draw on edges and model while that picture's in the background so it's really perfectly accurate. So for vehicles and hard edge things that have to be perfectly precise, often you'll do that. I'm not doing that in this video. I'm just having it kind of there to look at because I'm not really concerned with making this perfectly like this cone. It's just a reference image so I can see what a cone should look like. In a future video, I will do something very specific where I set up a bunch of reference planes and kind of model using those reference planes in the background. But this is just more of an eyeballing thing. And eyeballing is good for your eye because I want to use my eye to judge, is it too short, is it too long, whatever. So for now, I have my reference images. There's two things we're going to set up. One of them which is called auto mirror. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Edit, Preferences, and I'm going to want you to go to add-ons. So once again, I'll do this again. I go to the Edit tab, I go to Preferences, and I go to add-ons. Now, Blender has all of these add-ons that are there kind of waiting, dormant, waiting to be loaded. Because if you loaded all of them, the program would be too heavy and it would, would just be unnecessary amounts of data. So whenever you want them, you just choose them and it will then load them. So I'm going to type in this little search bar, auto mirror, and it's 2 words. And that's the one that I want. Now it's already installed, so it's ticked, but yours won't be ticked. So I tick that. Now, just to be sure, I'm going to go to this bottom left-hand thing, and I'm just going to write Save Preferences. There's a box checked off that says Auto Save Preferences. I don't entirely trust it, so I'm just going to write Save Preferences. Keep the box checked, but still. The next thing I want to load is called Node Wrangler. Node, and that's the one that we're looking for. Mine is ticked off because I already loaded it. So, but you would just tick off the box. Node Wrangler, like it's wrangling the nodes. And once again, I'll go to the bottom and just make sure this is saved. So the next time I open up Blender, it will be loaded already. So I want to show you that on the right here, there's a little arrow. If I tick this, I have all these other options. Right now, I'm actually going to enable my screencast keys because I've loaded this up. This allows me to, as you'll see on the left, that allows me to show you what buttons I'm using. Middle, mouse, left, all that stuff. Let me go back here. Again, I can press this arrow or I can press N. And if I go on the bottom, there's this little tab called Edit, which wasn't there before you loaded Auto Mirror. If I click that now, I have this option called Auto Mirror. Now, I haven't done anything yet, but we're going to use this. And the Node Wrangler you'll see in the next video. But now they're loaded, so we can use them when we need to. All right, let's go back to this ice cream cone. I noticed just by looking at it that the ice cream cone needs to be a little bit longer, like taller. So I'm going to press Scale Z, SZ, and I'm just going to make it a little bit longer. Maybe like that. Then I'm going to go to Edit Mode, and somehow this is already selected. So I'm going to actually, just to be sure, I'm going to do my, there we go. I'm going to do my X-ray and select the whole thing and get rid of my X-ray. And then I'm just going to drag that down a little bit to make the bottom part of the cone a bit longer and a little bit smaller. Okay, cool. Oh, I know why it's selected because I beveled it in the last video. Okay, so now we have our cone. It's all right. So now we're going to add this waffle texture. So I'm going to first count how many of these lines do I have? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the geometry of the mesh to extrude these lines. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I also have one hidden at the top. So I actually have 7. And you're going to see, in this case, you see that it's squares and it kind of elongates. I'm just going to kind of make them squares. So I need 7 extra edge loops. So if I go into edit mode, I click this, and again, to add an edge loop, Control R or Command R. And I'm going to scroll my mouse wheel until I have 7 lines. 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's just count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, I'm going to accept that, and then I'm going to move these up because the first line is like underneath the little flippy thing. And I'm going to actually just scale them a little bit. I want them to be a bit wider. So I'm going to do scale Z, and that will make them a bit wider. I need a bit more, yes, at the bottom there's a bit of space. Maybe I'll just go GZ and move them down a little bit. Okay, that's probably pretty good. All right, now is a good time to apply this auto mirror thing. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to select a whole bunch of lines in this, a whole bunch of edges. It's going to be kind of tedious. So since I don't want to do this forever, I'm going to enable what's called mirroring. So if I go to Edit, Auto Mirror, I have a few other things installed which you don't need, but for now, I'm just going to pretend I don't have this. So dum, I'm doing my thing. I want to have these menus. I press N, and I'm going to go to Edit, and you'll have only Auto Mirror. So I'm going to click that. Auto Mirror means, as you're going to see, it's going to basically make it so that half the mesh is deleted, and then it is mirrored. So if I click this, if I mirror it on the x-axis, it means it's mirroring it horizontally. So it's going to keep this section, and this will be a mirror image. So as soon as I click this, you'll see what happens. But before I click it, I want to show you. Since this is the x-axis, that's what it's going to mirror it on. It says orientation positive. Now you know in math, the positive x-axis is this one, the right-hand axis. So from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, -1, -2, -3, -4. So this is the positive x-axis, which means it's going to keep this part, the part that's left of the origin. So if I click it, there you go. Now if you see all the way on the other side, it is kept basically 1/2 of it. And it's also created at the same time. If I go to this, by the way, what I just clicked there was the modifiers tab, wrench. This wrench shows you all of what are called modifiers on Blender. Modifiers are basically a non-destructive way of changing things. Non-destructive meaning they're not permanent. I can turn them on or off. So now I have created this mirror modifier. If I turn it off, you're going to see the mesh is actually only half there. As soon as I press auto mirror, it instantaneously deleted that left half. And it's replaced it with basically a virtual image. But whenever I want to apply it, it will create that and it'll be actual geometry. This allows me to do, for example, this. Select a bunch, I move them, and it's going to mirror everything I do on the other side. This is extremely useful because now whatever I do on one side will be replicated on the other side. I don't have to do half the work. There's also a few settings which you need to understand for the mirror option. If clipping is turned on, it will fuse these two halves. If clipping is turned off, for example, if I select this stuff, let's say I select this stuff, and I move it, it separates. The mesh actually separates because it's not fused together. Most of the time, you enable clipping, which means it's going to glue it together. And merge means it's going to actually merge the vertices that are close to each other. In this case, anything that's 1 millimeter apart will be merged. I might make it even a bit bigger to make sure that everything is really stuck together. So I'll make it like a centimeter. Okay, so now whatever I do on this side is going to be matched on the other side. To really see what I'm doing, I can press this. And now it gives me a sense of what the other side is going to look like. Now I can see that this is, I'm going to even make it even more of a merge. This means now it's completely fused. Maybe I'll go back to what it was before, 0.5. All right, let's see what this looks like. I see that there's a seam there. Okay, I'm going to go back to the 0.001. And should be okay. All right. There's a weird thing there. I'm going to just eliminate. You notice that there's 3 edges. Just before moving on, I'm going to make sure I'm on edge mode. Just and I just deleted that extra edge. There was an extra edge there for some reason. I'm going to see if it's on the other side too. Ah, there is. I don't want these 3 edges, so I'm pressing Alt, click, and I'm going to press Control X, which dissolves that extra edge. So now there's exactly the amount of edges that I want, and nothing weird will happen, I hope. Okay, so everything's cool now. Great. So I'm going to turn this back off so I don't look at that. Now I'm going to go and select the parts that I want to be extruded. So this is going to be this. I'll show you. I'm going to click on here. I'm going to go down here and I'm going to press Control and click again. That's selected this entire edge. Now, if you look at my reference picture here, hold on, let me go back. That's what I want to do. I want to select that whole edge there. And if I mirror it, you'll see that now I've basically created in between these 2 edges, there's a square. That's what I want because I'm going to basically do all of these edges, as you're going to see, and create my grid pattern. So again, if I press, I don't want this to disappear. So I'm going to press Shift and click this again, and then hold down Control and click the bottom. Once again, Shift, click, Control, hold the bottom. And that, and that, and that. Shift, click, Control, bottom. Shift, click, Control, bottom. Shift, click, Control. And now we see the other side popping out. And now I've done all of those vertical spans. In CG technology, in CG talk, usually you call those vertical edge loops spans because they span the whole model. All right, now I want to select these edge loops, Shift, Alt, and I'm going to click this, and this, and I'm going to click all of these loops that are going to become part of the grid. Okay, cool. I also maybe want to move this up a little bit so you don't see the top edge. So I'm going to press GZ, and I'm going to move the whole thing up just like that. Cool. All right, so that is my grid pattern. Now I'm going to use the amazing bevel tool. But in this case, the bevel tool is not going to be there to smooth anything. But you're going to see it will split each edge into 2. So if I go Control B and I pull out, now I've created a thickness where I before only had a line. I'm going to make it, yeah, I guess something like that. I'm going to go back to my front view so I can use my reference a little bit. I'm going to click End so I don't have to look at this. Great. All right, so that's something like that. Maybe a little bit bigger. I'm going to redo that. Control B, drag it out a little bit. All right, that's okay. And now this is where my grid is going to be. And now I'm going to extrude this. So I'm going to press Alt E, extrude faces along normal, and that will pull it out. So it's not very thick. Maybe something like that. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, okay. All right. And now, just before anything, just in case, I now have all of this stuff selected. It's very annoying. If I had to try to reselect all of these loops for some reason, it would be super annoying. So I'm going to go to this vertex groups thing, and I'm going to click. I'm going to create a vertex group. I'm going to see if it works first. And if it works, I'll show you how to do it. If it doesn't work, I won't. All right, let's see if this works. Assign. It does. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to do this. So to do this, what this is, vertex groups are a way of saving a selection. So this selection that I have here, maybe I want to use for something else. I'm going to save it by creating what's called a vertex group, which is basically a group of, in this case, faces or vertices. So to do that, I go to this kind of green triangle and I click on this. That's where I am now. Before I was in the modifier tab. The green triangle is everything to do with vertices and stuff like that. And in this first box here, it says vertex groups. If I click the plus, I now have created a vertex group. And so I have a place that I can store something, but nothing's stored yet. Now that, since everything is selected, I press this button that's called assign. And that means that it'll assign all these vertices to this group, it kind of bookmarks them. To make sure this worked, unclick it and select that. Ah, it worked. That means that it saved this. So whatever I'm doing, if I ever want to get all that grid back, I just press select and it'll pop back up. If I hadn't done that, it would be a royal pain to try to get all that back again because there's so many different faces. The vertex groups are very useful. So anyway, now that it's selected, I have it just in case I need it. I'm going to go and see what this looks like. It looks pretty good, but you notice that since every single edge is completely 90 degrees, it looks very weird because you don't have any light bouncing off the edges. This needs to be beveled. So we're going to go back, but instead of beveling everything individually, I'm going to use a bevel modifier, which is a way of putting bevels in a non-destructive manner. So if I click add modifier, I'm going to search and I'm going to write bevel. And it already appeared because I did it before. Now, as soon as I click this, you're going to see that all of these grids get soft all of a sudden. Or do they? Let's see. Interesting that nothing happened. Well, first of all, I want to just make sure of something. I'm going to make sure that all of my transformations are actually applied. They are not. Because I scaled it, the modifiers sometimes don't work perfectly. So I'm just going to make sure of something before I do anything. Notice that the scale here, what this is, by the way, I just make sure you know which menu this is. I press N once again. This is the top menu. It has all the basic statistics for the location, which is the placement of this thing. So right now it says 0, 0, 0, which means it is on the origin. The point here is on the origin. The rotation, I haven't rotated it, but I have made this bigger. So to make all of this fixed, I want to make this this shape right now is the default. I'm going to press Control and A. Oh, Control and A. This brings up a menu which is called Apply. I want to apply this transformation. I stretched it out a bit, but I want to apply it so that now it is this shape now is the default. So I'm going to write all transforms. All right. And for some reason, oh, I know why, because everything was selected. Okay, I'm just going to select that, press A, all transforms. That makes much more sense. Okay, now it's selected. Okay, now if I press bevel, maybe something will happen. No. I am wondering why nothing happened. Very interesting indeed. Okay, I'm going to see something. Let's see if I put vertex group. Let's see if I do this. Interesting that nothing is actually happening here. And I wonder why that is. Let's see if I go back in here. I wonder what's happening. This is weird. Okay, well, I am very confused right now. I'm going to try something. First of all, I'm going to apply this modifier. Let's see if maybe that makes a difference. All right, that modifier is applied. Still, we got nothing. Well, that's why, because it was on edges. Hold on. Ah, okay. All right. Well, I'm going to do this manually. I'm going to go back to my vertex groups. I'm going to select those, and I'm just going to bevel this by hand. Whoa, my God. All right, so that's with no beveling. That's with a little bit. I'm just going to undo that so I can do this again. All right. Maybe we're going to do 2 segments. Like maybe like that. All right. Oh, that looks pretty good. Okay. So I'll keep it like that. Now it still looks very, very geometric. Actually, I'm going to go back and only do one loop. So I'm scrolling back and just having it be one loop, seeing what that looks like, and maybe adding one more, maybe two. See? Yeah, okay, that's pretty good. Okay. Now it still looks very geometric, and you might say, wow, this is like looking way too regular. But the thing is, I'm going to be putting a bump map on it. So let me just give you a preview so you can understand that this is not going to look this sharp once I actually put the shading on. So let's just give you a preview for now. This right now has no color in it. So right now, just for the sake of looking at things, I'm going to show you how to put the basic shader on it. So if I click this, I have my basic shader. I'm just going to put like a very simple base color now. So later on, I'm going to make it more interesting with various colors. But for now, I just want to do kind of a basic color. It's a bit more orangey. Maybe a little bit less peachy than that. A little bit more yellow. Maybe more. Okay, for now, we'll go with something like that, just so there's a color. Okay, so I'm going to turn on the roughness a little bit. All right, now I want to show you what this is going to look like because I have to add a bump map. So a cone really has all these bumps, these kind of texture of the cone. So I'm going to add right now a bump map. If I put add and I write bump, oh, I didn't do anything, bump. Bring that over here. I'm going to plug this into the normal map, the normal inlet, and nothing's going to happen because I haven't actually fed anything in to tell it how to bump things. Bumping means basically pushing the surface to create a texture. So I'm going to add a noise texture. And if you've seen the previous videos, I did this a lot. So I'm going to plug this in. The noise texture, I'm going to plug into the height. Now it's going to look really weird at first because the noise, which is a bunch of dots, the noise is just a bunch of dot patterns. It is huge. It's large blobs. I do not want large blobs. I want the scale to be much smaller. So if I zoom this in, the scale becomes smaller. Basically what it means is you're making more of these bumps in a given surface area. So of course it's crazy strong now. Now that's because the strength is all the way to 1. I'm going to turn this down and I'm going to turn the distance down. The distance means how far it is from the surface. So I'm going to turn this way down, maybe like that, and I'm going to turn the strength also down. So it's more like that. Maybe the distance a little bit up. And I just want to show you, if I rotate the lights a little bit, I have a bit more diffusion now. It's not quite so sharp. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add what's called subsurface scattering. So that's going to make the cone look more translucent, less opaque. By the way, I'm just going to turn this down so you don't have to see this kind of grass and stuff in the background. I'm just giving it, okay, so that's good. I can see it like that. Now, if I go to this tab here, I'm going to open it up, subsurface. I'm going to put on the weight, which means that I'm going to have some subsurface scattering. It's going to take a second. Nothing much is going to happen. Now it looks almost the same. But here's what's going to happen. If I take this slider, which says scale, and I slide it, the more I slide it, the more it looks waxy and translucent. So scale means how thick the surface has to be to let light pass through it. If it's all the way here, light won't pass through anything that's thick. As I slide it over here, more light is passing through the surface, and it's starting to look more like wax than like opaque thing. Now I see that as I'm doing that, the color is changing to a bit more yellowish. So I'm just going to change the color a little bit so it's not quite so obvious. Maybe more that and a little bit darker. And you see that this is kind of making the cone look more like light is passing through it. It's a little bit too much though. I'll tone it down a little bit. Scale, maybe let's do 0.25. That's not bad. If I'm going to go back into the layout tab, you see that it looks pretty good like that. It has a translucency, which a cup really has, because when you have one of those cones, light passes through the other side. So that looks pretty good. And in the next video, we're going to do some ice cream. We're also going to add much more texture to this. Actually, while we're here, let's just do that. I'm going to finish up making the cone here. I want to add, in this case, it just looks like one color. I don't want to have just one color. Nothing in real life, nothing that's organic, and a cone is an organic thing, nothing has one color. So I want to, instead of having just one color here, I want to have two colors that are sort of broken up very subtly. So I'm going to add something. I'm going to add, first of all, a color ramp. I go to add and I write C, color ramp. And you'll see what this is in a second. I'm also going to add, no, I'm not going to add. I'm going to duplicate this noise texture. So I want to have another noise texture node. Remember that noise texture is blobs of black and white. It's just used for making broken up patterns. I use it to make this bumpy texture, but now I'm going to use it to make colors that are sort of like mixing together, slightly more dark and slightly more light to make up the cone. So I want a new version of this noise texture. I click it and I press Shift D and pull it over there. Now I have a duplicate. It's because I'm going to change some of the settings. Now, if I plug this in here and I plug this in, everything's going to go back to black and white. And what's even weirder, when I plug this in here, you're going to see these big blobs of black and white. There we go. So this is what is basically the pattern. Now, I don't want the pattern to be anywhere near that small. Actually, on the cone, I kind of want large areas of sort of different colors that are really subtle. If you look on the cone here, the real cone, it's kind of darker here and there's kind of random blotchiness. So I want to kind of have more something like that. Maybe even, maybe something like that. We'll see once I put color. Now, obviously it's black and white. I don't want it to be black and white. So the black color, I'm going to make basically a dark version of that cone color. To change these colors, I'm going to click here. I have two sliders. In this case, just black and just white. First, I'm going to change the black color. I'm going to click here. It's just black, and I'm going to slide it up and actually make a kind of a cone color, but maybe a little bit darker than what I had before. And I'll make it more like, I guess it's kind of hard to tell now. I'll make it like that for now. And then I'm going to take the white and make it also a cone color, but maybe a little bit of a lighter version. So this one will be the light version, and the other one will be a little bit darker. Okay, so now you see there's not much difference between these two. Maybe I'll make this one a little bit darker. So that if I go really dark, you see that now you see patterns. If I go not very dark, it just looks like a kind of a, you don't even notice it, but it just looks a little bit more real. Kind of have it made like that, go up a little bit like that. That's a bit better. And now what will happen, if I make these next to each other, it's very contrasty. That just looks like some weird looking marbled thing. If I have them far from each other though, the two colors kind of fade into each other and just give it this subtlety of breakup that looks a bit more real. Maybe I'll make it a little bit smaller. And this color needs to be a little bit more saturated. It's too gray. And I'll make this one even a little bit lighter, just to give it more contrast. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Okay, there we go. So here's our cone. The light's too bright there. I'll turn that down a little bit. Make the rotation like I did before. It's more like that. That's not bad. Maybe a bit brighter. Oh. Yeah, because it's kind of, the top part of the cone is often kind of pretty pale. Okay, that's pretty good. Save that. And I'm going to go to my subsurface scattering. Where is it? There. And I want maybe when the light passes through a little bit more reddishness in the cone. If I go all the way, you see that it's very red. I don't want to do that. That would look like a skin, but just a little bit more. And that's green. Not that much of that. Maybe that's okay. So, and a little bit less translucency. This 0.2. Okay, all right, that's all right. Cool. So, and of course I can't leave it well enough alone because I'm crazy. So that should be a little bit more orangey. Okay, I'll just leave it at that. Dun, 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 dun. All right, there we go. Okay, so then when we come back, I will do the ice cream.